Episode 183 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Kraig, Becker, and Dave Adlard of the Adventure Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. If you use Audible, then you know. If you're not, you're missing out. It's like having a library in your phone, and I use it a lot. Audible helps the miles fly by on the road or in the air as I'm enjoying great books I discover or are recommended to me by friends. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Start your 30-day free trial with Audible today. audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast. I believe achieving success in the outdoor biz is dependent upon embracing the outdoor lifestyle and learning from outdoor leaders that came before you. If you agree, then listen up for tips, advice, and hacks about growing or starting your career in the outdoor biz. My name is Rick Sayes. Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast. On this episode, Kraig, Dave, and I talk about the outdoor and adventure travel industries, podcasting, their outdoor introduction, and much, much more. But before we get into the interview, my book Trails to the Top dropped today on Amazon. Go to Amazon.com and search Rick Sayes or Trails to the Top and grab your copy today. The Kindle version will be on sale for a limited time at 99 cents and the paperback for $1.99. Great stories, outdoor biz, career advice, and more from guests on this podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being back. It seems like hardly any time at all since we chatted with you.
I know. It's been, maybe almost a month? It seems like it was last week.
Yeah, I think it was about we're on the Adventure Podcast, much to the delight of our listeners. So we're excited to be here with you.
Yeah, good. I'll share the Adventure Podcast. I forget the episode number, but I'll be sure and share that with my listeners in the notes so they can catch up on that. And I'll share all the info for this with you guys so you can share it all up. Let's get started with how you guys got into the outdoor industry. How'd that happen?
I'll start with that one because it was totally by accident.
For most of it is. For most of us, it is, I should say.
I won't speak too much for Dave, but I know he and I both share a tremendous love for being outdoors and adventure and all the sports that we enjoy doing outside. And about 12 and a half years ago, I started a little blog called the Adventure Blog, just to write about the things that I was interested in. And kind of, it sprung from this idea that everything in the world had been done. Everest had been climbed, people at the North Pole and all. And I was telling my friends, no, it's not true. There's lots of cool stuff going on. So I started this little blog, and over the span of about a year and a half, it started to pick up some traction. I'd write about my own adventures and travels, but also about things that other people were doing. And here we are, more than a decade later.
Wow.
The blog is still going. And it was kind of my entry point. I started getting invites to go do things and started going to Outdoor Retailer. People started putting a face to the name. And now here we are. And I do it full time. At the time, it was just a side project for fun. Now I write and podcast and do all those fun things as a full-time gig.
So you got into the business as a media guy. Good for you.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And I went about it completely the other way. I was I was a doer, and I did my first Ironman when I was 50, but I taught mountaineering and did all kinds of crazy stuff. And I got into adventure racing kind of by accident. Basically, we saw this show, Eco Borneo, was on Eco Challenge Borneo, 10 years or so ago.
Yeah, maybe long. I remember that. Yeah.
And it was, kind of going through that mid-40s crisis where you're still a legend in your own mind and you think nothing's wrong, and then you look in the mirror accidentally by sideways, because men are smart. We never look in the mirror sideways. We always look just straight on. And
I never look in the mirror.
Women are the opposite. Women always look sideways. And so, it was like, I thought it was still an athlete, and then a bit of an odd story. We're actually at Little Beach on Hawaii and on Maui, and on clothing is optional on Sunday, well, most any day, but and my wife and I, we weren't partaking of that, and there was several other things people were partaking of, but we got back to the condo and this was our first day. We just landed, went to Little Beach, and I got back and I was looking through her photos, and this is back when you had your little digital camera and you kind of clicked through the pictures. I was like, who's the fat middle-aged white guy? And it turned out it was me. And so had to do something. So came back and was actually with another one of our adventure podcast guests, Rick McCharles. We were running at Farragut State Park here, and I said, I saw this Eco Borneo thing. I'm going to do an adventure race. I mean, how hard could it be? And so we said, and he said, great, I'm in. And of course, the irony is he's never actually done one with us. But I called some friends and said, okay, I'm doing an adventure race. They said, great, we're in. What is it? And said, I don't know, but we're going to find out. And so started attending these races, and of course made the fatal mistake. We actually won our first race through a weird set of circumstances, and of course then you're hooked.
Right,
and
right. And then
but a lot of the races
we
went to, a lot of the races were not very well organized or hosted. And my wife and I host one of the country's biggest, most successful gymnastics competitions. So we have 5,000 guests come and join us in Coeur d'Alene every year. And so we've kind of got a bunch of systems down for just organizing these sporting events. So I said, we can organize a race. So I said, we started doing races, and then some smaller ones, and then a couple-day stage race where we had Mike Closer and Team Nike came out, and everybody seemed to like it. And then we hosted a couple of week-long races called Expedition Idaho, and then we were up in Alaska, and my wife said, you've got to do a race here, and that became the birth of our Expedition Alaska race.
Oh, cool.
And which Kraig was our media guy on. And so, but in that whole process of starting to do these adventure races, I started going to outdoor retail more or less to look for sponsorship, and because the gear was really fun. And he and I just kind of hit it off, and I went down. I was thinking about hosting a little obstacle course race outside of Austin where he was living at the time. And we met for dinner and just kind of hit it off. And so we started going to OR together. And of course, by this time, he's developing quite the name for himself. And so I was basically, as I said, I was his his able-bodied assistant that would carry his luggage around OR and things like that.
Grab all the swag.
That's right. And then when he wanted to do the podcast, and we had kind of talked about it, and he says, I think we should do this. Here we are, and I'm quite happy to be second billing to the man, the myth, the legend himself.
So, were you guys both in the military also? Is that how you got?
I was.
You were.
Yeah, I'm a civilian.
Oh, okay, I thought you were in the military also. I guess I was mistaken.
No, but I have some good friends, and I've done quite a bit in that area. Written a book with a Navy SEAL, so
okay,
yeah,
that may be he's many.
So you've been around through vicariously.
Yep, absolutely.
Gotcha.
But Dave had a storied career as a underwater demolitions guy in the Canadian Navy.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Got about 4 or 5 ships, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we blew stuff up for a while, so that was good.
That'd be fun. Yeah, exactly. So, Dave, you came in as an athlete. Kraig, you started out as a media, and then you guys both blended. How'd the podcast? What was the inspiration for the podcast?
Well, I'm a big podcast guy. I love to listen to podcasts. It's pretty much all I listen to in the car these days, and when I'm out for a run or riding my bike or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I want to interrupt. I didn't know what a podcast was, so
this will be a common theme as we go through, because I'll how Dave mentioned that he told his friends we should do an adventure race, and they were like, "Perfect, what's that?"
Right.
That's how a lot of our schemes come together too. I'll say, let's do a podcast.
It sounds like a good idea at the time. I love that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's like, here, hold my beer.
Exactly.
So I, after listening to podcasts for years, I started thinking, there's a few good outdoor podcasts out there, but there's not a lot, and there's an open space there to do some interesting things. And what I do on the adventure blog converts nicely to a podcast. So I think I'd like to do that, but no one's going to want to listen to me talking to myself. That's super boring. Even if you have some interviews on and stuff, there's other things in our format that we wanted to do. So
yeah.
I started to think, who would I have on as my co-host? And really the list was very short.
Well, the first 6 people turned him down. So then I came up.
I'm sure it was one person. Come on, Dave, you're on the list.
So yeah, it didn't take long for me. I was in Coeur d'Alene actually visiting, doing an event out there, and spent the weekend with Dave. We hung out, went mountain biking, and did all kinds of fun stuff. And at the time I said, I think I'm really thinking about putting together a podcast. What do you think about co-hosting with me? And of course, he was like, "Great, what's a podcast?" And that's where it went. And and now we're coming up on almost 2 years. And now when Dave goes to Outdoor Retailer, he is seen as a media guy, and he's getting a different education in what the industry is like from that side of the table.
So there's hope for me then.
Yes, there is, because if I can do it, by God, anybody can.
Yeah, I came in the industry completely different, not as a media guy. So this media stuff is all new to me, and a different animal, that's for sure.
And I like to describe the podcast when people ask me about it who haven't heard it. I always say, well, you know how like when you watch an NFL football game, you've got the play-by-play guy and you got the color guy.
Mm-hmm.
Dave is definitely my color guy. He's got the story, he's got the personality. I'm the guy that's there like, oh, it's 1st and 10, and right. Dave's like, he just blew the cleats off that guy. I think it works.
It works well. Yeah, you guys do a good job. How did you learn the technical side of podcasting? How did you get the audio down and, find a podcast host and publish it and share it and all that stuff? How'd that all come about?
Craig, you want me to handle this one?
Yeah, Dave, you run with it. As we mentioned off air, Dave's not necessarily the most technical of the two of us.
So Dave is the one that is quite happy when he figures out how to turn his microphone on. So no, this would be completely a Kraig question.
Are you one of those guys that leaves it all set up so you don't have to change anything, and then you hit the button and wait, it doesn't work. I just left it exactly as it was. What happened?
Well, and ironically, that's kind of our model, but it's surprising how many times you do that, and something something is like
something
the
changes.
Gremlins have got in it somehow,
right, exactly.
And and like we have a couple of infamous incidents in our podcast, including the famous missing episode 0 or missing episode 1, and then we had one of our more recent interviews where we were literally like 25 minutes into the interview, and Craig's like, hey guys, the needles aren't moving. And we basically had to start our whole thing over. The good news was our guest he was a great sport, and the second time around it actually came out better than the first time. So, but as far as how the technical stuff, I'm going to go nibble some lunch here and let Kraig tell you guys all that.
All right, sounds good.
My background before I got into writing for a living was as an IT guy for multiple companies.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah, so I have a technical background. Aside from that, even now as not working in IT, I'm still a complete gadget and tech nerd. Mm-hmm. So I follow the industry closely. I check on things, and I enjoy going down the rabbit hole of figuring stuff out. So from the time I pitched Dave on doing a podcast to the time we launched, probably 6 months passed.
Wow.
And during the time I was looking at where should we host? Where's what kind of equipment do we need? Who, can I listen to for ideas? I kind of did a lot of research and also thought about a format and what we wanted to do and how we approach. Very measured approach to it before we got started. But yeah, that's how I went. And we launched on one hosting platform and then immediately realized that there were some better ones out there and actually made the transition over to a second one relatively quickly. I don't recommend anybody do that. You find the one you want right away and stick with it.
It's pretty challenging from what I hear. Yeah,
it's a pain if you make the move. Fortunately, we were only a couple of episodes. I think we were only maybe 2 episodes in or 3 maybe, and it was not that challenging yet. But things you learn as you go. And listening to a lot of podcasts helped to think about ideas and formats and stuff, as you probably know.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And figuring out the technical stuff just was doing a little research and seeing what we need, and then telling Dave, here's what you need to order from Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was still trying to figure out how to plug a microphone into my flip phone. So, but no,
I thought you said just plug a microphone into your flip
Kraig just sent me a link, one of those Amazon things like, hey, Kraig thinks you should check this out. And just like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
And being a bit of a Prime addict, it was like, oh, hey, click. Next thing you know, all my stuff showed up.
Yeah. And it's really, it's kind of you look at it initially, at least for me, it's kind of daunting. But then when you get into it, it's like, wow, this is not really that tough. It's, once you do a little research and get your head around it, it's pretty straightforward. I felt anyway.
Well, and I've even been able to do a couple of solo interviews myself and had to, learn how to get recording software. Of course, the very first one, apparently there's a little button that says mono or stereo. So I talking in one ear and the answers were in the other, but we got that one figured out too. But so yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, and again, if I can sort of figure it out, then it's pretty much open game for most anybody that's alive.
Yeah, if anybody's out there thinking about it, don't let it scare you. How often do you guys publish an episode?
We try to do one every week, provided we are home. Dave and I are both on the road a lot. I just recently got back from Africa, so we did not have good internet access while I was in Zanzibar, so there was no show while I was there. Dave, recently, here comes his train. You're going to want to edit.
Okay.
Wait for that to go by.
Yeah, no worries.
We're getting used to that.
Yeah, I'll bet. It sounds close.
Yeah.
Well, and it's ironically, it's not as close as it sounds, but we've got very good mics. But the reason I do them here at the restaurant is because we have really, really good internet versus my house, which is up in the hills, and we only have satellite internet, which is I could actually do smoke signals quite a bit faster.
Satellite's pretty scary. I had that for a while. I was trading stocks with satellite internet. That was scary. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So episode about once a week, and you up to how many now?
We are up to 70, technically 75. We started with an episode 0, just kind of as a test run.
Yeah.
That's still out there. So we just put episode 74 out right before Labor Day. We took the Labor Day week off, and we'll get back at it right after that. But we try to do one every week if I'm home and not traveling. And sometimes Dave takes his mic with him on the road, as he did to the Grand Tetons recently, and we recorded an episode while he was on the road and I was at home. And it works out pretty well. That's one of the other nice things about podcasting. If you have decent internet, you can actually do it from just about anywhere.
Yep.
I have a portable mic that we took to Outdoor Retailer a couple times and did some stuff there. And it's pretty easy to do if you got good internet.
Pretty simple. Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode?
Dave, do you want to go with that one first?
People ask me, I'm a chef as my other real job now, and people ask me what's my favorite thing to cook, and it's kind of whatever I'm cooking right then. I would say, every episode when we're doing it is our favorite, with just a couple of exceptions where there's been a couple of times where either because of minor technical things or we hadn't done one in a while, it seemed, they came out fine, but to us, it seemed like we were a little off our game that day. But
Been there.
A lot of the ones, again, much the same as cooking, is so much of it is based on how our guests, did the guests really love it? And so we've had some episodes where we've had, great feedback from our listeners. And there's been a couple that I think have gone on to become my favorites more because of the response and what they've done for other people. We've had people now that have gone out and done like some truly badass adventure stuff, like riding the Great Divide Trail that they never would have done. And they did because they heard us talking about turning micro adventures into macro adventures and living your adventure. They were inspired enough that they went out and did this. And now, so those ones in my mind and in my heart are have to be the favorites.
That's pretty cool.
Simply because of the response from people. If I had one to pick that we did great, some of our list ones where we've done our favorite lists of national parks, books, and things. I love those ones.
Yeah.
I got to do an interview with Chad Salmala, the NBC cross-country ski and biathlon commentator. Yeah. That one was really fun for me. Those are some of the ones that stick out in my mind.
Kraig, you have a favorite?
I agree with Dave. A lot of them are, there's some that I really, really enjoy, but I would say probably one of the more seminal shows for me was that episode where we talked about turning micro adventures into macro adventures. This concept of going hiking during the day, but turning that into like down the line, you go trek Kilimanjaro or you do Everest Base Camp or, blow up for a bigger adventure. And we talked about how people can start small and then build from there.
Right.
And what was great about it was the response we got, because it was one of the first times we saw how engaged our audience was. we started getting great feedback on Facebook and Twitter and stuff, and people sharing their thoughts and ideas. And that one really, I think, was maybe episode 25 or 30, somewhere in that range. I don't.
Yeah.
But it was that point where we started to see how podcasts are more engaging in different ways than just writing a blog.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's been astounding for us to see over the last year in particular, as the audience has grown and we've built a larger library and things.
Yeah, I think we were talking
of course,
about.
And then our adventure badass ones are always fun too.
Yeah, those are awesome. Yeah, I think we were talking about that when I was on your show about how language and the human voice is an intimate form of conversation. So I think it engages more than the written word, right? You don't. It leaves so much more to your imagination as the guy's telling the story. You can imagine yourself, picture yourself being there and doing that, and you find some of those stories you get goosebumps because you think, oh my God, I could, it scares you sometimes.
and as I mentioned earlier, I like to listen to podcasts in the car while I'm running
same.
or something. And it's that voice in your ear while you're going out for a run is so much more personable and personal than it is sitting in front of your computer or your tablet or something or phone reading a blog site or something.
Right.
I always love my blog. It's my firstborn child, if you will. And I don't know, I can't imagine not doing it. It's such a part of my life. But the podcast, level of engagement with the podcast has just grown so dramatically, so much faster. So
yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. We drove down to Jackson to Grand Teton, and it's about especially with the way my wife travels, it's about like a 10-hour drive. And my daughter is very much into Harry Potter. And so I had read her book number 1, and my wife pulled up book number 2 on Audible. And so we basically listened to the first half of the Harry Potter book being read to us by a guy in an English accent the entire way down.
Yeah.
And on the way back, we actually brought our friend back with us, and he's quite a literary guy. And we normally just talk. And Kraig is a mutual friend of ours, Dave Holcomb. He came back up. But anyways, Delaney wanted to listen to the thing. We ended up listening to the entire rest of that book for like 8 hours on the way home. There was no conversation. We just sat there enthralled and listening to this guy read a book that we've all read and seen the movie. So, and I think that podcast kind of has that same effect.
I think you're right. My phone is filled with podcasts and Audible books. I mean, that takes up the majority of the memory, just because the same thing. You put a book in, you put a podcast in, and whatever the topic is, sometimes they're not as engaging. You put a different one in, but most of them are very engaging. The stories are great. It's a good way to not only pass the time but learn and get educated. So I love those awards you guys give out at Outdoor Retailer. How long have you guys been doing that? That was very cool. Is very cool.
I think we started them at the November show of last year. Is that right, Dave?
Let's see, November, January, June. So I've had 3 sets made. So it would have been November last year.
Yeah, the now gone November show from Outdoor Retail.
Right.
That we went to last year. That was our first time we debuted them. And, David had emailed me that, hey, we had done on our previous shows, we had done at Outdoor Retailer, we had done sort of follow-ups and talked about our favorite things, but we hadn't given out awards per se. And as we were getting ready to go to that November show, Dave said, I'm going to get some awards made and I'll bring them along. And, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And then we got there and he took them out of the bag to show me. And I was floored by the craftsmanship. It has our logo on it.
They're beautiful. Yeah,
it was fantastic. And I believe a local guy in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where Dave lives, does the awards for us. And it took laser etched the photo I took of Ama Dablam in Nepal. That's the mountain.
Cool.
And he laser etches it on there and puts the name of the show and the name of the award and stuff like that. And then we go and hand them out. And it's been a really fun thing. People are really blown away by those.
That's my favorite part of OR, actually. And I think that it's every time we give them out, it's just like this surge of happiness, because people, even some of the bigger companies, we choose a lot of smaller companies, but we gave one out to North Face and some of these folks they're either faking it or they are truly happy and and thrilled to be getting the award. Like we did one to Rivian, and they basically got their entire, and that's kind of what happens is like they'll get their entire team of everybody that's there that has to be in the picture. And so that's been a really fun thing for us. And I mean, just even, at the end of each day saying, okay, who do we want to give awards to? What was award worthy? Why? To me, that's my favorite. Well, other than getting to hang with my brother from another mother, that's my favorite part of OR.
Yeah, I think everybody's inspired by recognition. I think we all love recognition for what we've done, the hard work we've put in, and that's a good way to do that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and we go through some debates sometimes about whether or not this one or that one's worth giving an award.
Who is worthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in sync probably 99% of the time. Maybe 98% of the time, but
I was going to say 97, but yeah, one of our biggest regrets is that it took us so long to kind of come around to the brilliant patent pending novel idea of giving out awards at outdoor retail, because we missed. There were some of our favorite things, and we discussed this too. Is that some of the favorite things we have ever seen together at OR we saw before we had awards, and we actually had, I would say, probably our most ardent debate that we had is about whether or not could we justify somehow going back and giving these people an award for that, even though it was before our awards thing, just because it was so cool. But did it fit? I mean, we had quite a discussion, and really looking at it from devil's advocate point of view, and we could, but does that, how does that affect what we're doing? So I mean, that was one of our best debates we ever had on that.
So here's the $1 million question: how was the debate settled? What was the straw that broke the camel's back one way or the other?
I think, as usual, when it comes to honestly, Dave and I, we are in lockstep on probably 98% of everything in life.
That's why I asked. It makes it more interesting, I think. If you guys are that much in lockstep, yeah.
This was actually, I would say, this was other than a couple of like literary and sports arguments about who's the GOAT of this. This is probably the only time we really fundamentally disagreed with each other on where we were in this.
Right. So eventually we came basically to a compromise, because we did hand out a couple of retroactive awards. Mm-hmm. And I'll go on record as saying I was the one that was opposed to doing that. Dave wanted to go back and give some to folks that we had seen at previous shows. And I kept harping on the fact that it should be what's new, what's new that we're seeing. It's new gear. Yeah. And you could go back, Gore-Tex has been around for 30 years, longer, 40 years. We should go and give them an award just for being Gore-Tex, but it wasn't quite that kind of a debate. But eventually we both kind of gave a little and took a little. We did give a couple of awards out, but we also saw each other's point of view pretty well.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was, my argument was, well, if it was something that had come out since we started doing the podcast, then it was still valid to do, even though we didn't have the awards. That was our fault, not theirs. But Kraig's point was equally valid about the new thing. And so we actually, a couple of the companies helped us out because we'd been able to go do a couple of secret media previews where we weren't allowed to talk about it. Yep. And so even though it was things that were in the past, it was like, well, this was the first show that it was actually available for people to see. And so we were able to both of us justify that. And so it ended up being a pretty fair compromise. And, there's still a couple things that I think are really award worthy, but they'll modify those, and then we'll give it to them the next time.
Yeah. Good. I like it. Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. What outdoor activities do you guys still participate in? You still do adventure racing?
Yeah, well, as stupid as that is, yeah. And I do.
Good for you. Yeah, that's good on you.
Yeah, again, the lack of prep. I suffer from loft, which is lack of freaking talent. Is basically my thing. but lack of skill or preparation has never really stopped me from doing anything. It goes much along with lack of intelligence. But so I mountain bike probably 4 or 5 times a week. I try to get out on my bike and ride. I run. I've had a couple knee surgeries, so I have to run in moderation versus, Kraig is still a very avid and successful runner. But I teach little mountaineering, and I love paddling. And my daughter is a national level rock climber, and she does ninja warrior, kids ninja warrior stuff.
Cool.
But I'm trying to get her into adventure racing, and she loves trail running and can just kick my ass, especially going downhill. She's 10 years old, but she weighs so light. She's so light and so
10 years old, you're still made of rubber when you're 10 years old. So.
Oh my God. And we did this 8-mile loop around Jenny Lake in Grand Teton National Park. And we were out, there's 5 of us hiking, and Delaney wanted to run. And so I said, well, I'll run. And she, on flats, we can hang together, and, she could beat me if she really wanted, but we're chatting, and uphill's great. But downhill, normally in like the Tour de France, everybody can go downhill and it's who can go uphill wins. For her, oh no, she is so far ahead of me after going downhill, because she flies, and me, bad ankles and knees and being, old, I kind of mince my way downhill, and she just bounces down, so that she has to wait at the end. Yeah. Daddy, are you okay?
I can relate to that. Kraig, you still get out a bunch, sounds like?
Oh yeah, I'm a almost daily runner. I do about 40, 45 miles of running a week.
Good for you.
Ride when I can. I'm testing some e-bikes right now, so that's a nice blend of riding, but also that assisted riding. But that's a lot of fun. But I ride when I can. I like to mountain bike. I like to road ride. Anything that gets me outdoors, really. I do paddling here and there when we can. I like to go hiking. I've been fortunate enough, because I do some travel writing. I get invited to go do fun, wonderful, cool things all over the planet that
Very
are
cool.
unique. So I, people always ask me, are you training for a marathon? Are you training for a half or whatever? And I really don't run races ever, but I have found that it pays to be in good shape for this work that we're in.
Yes,
because you never, when you're going to be called to go, hey, do you want to go hike a mountain in Peru, or do you want to go, and it happens. It happens. I'm at the end of the month looking like I'm going to Saudi Arabia for an event, and then I'm going over to Jordan for a little trip, and
awesome.
We're going to be active. So those things happen all of a sudden out of nowhere, and it pays to be in good shape. But anything that gets me outside, I'm still happy to do and enjoy doing.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and it's folks ask me what I'm training for, and I'm saying life 2.0.
Exactly. I have to work out just to be able to walk. I mean, it's I have bad knees, same way, bad knees and bad this, and you just can't let it stop. You got to keep moving, so you can keep moving. That's really what I look at it. Yeah. Do you guys have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor business, or maybe if they're already in, how to grow their career?
Do we? We did a whole podcast.
Weren't you listening?
I didn't hear that one. I'll have to go back and listen to that one. I missed that one. How did I miss
That's
that
actually
one?
been another one where we've had quite a bit of feedback from folks that have asked the same question, and then we've referred them back to the podcast, and we've got quite a bit of feedback on that as well.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely link to that. Send me the number of that one, and I'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, my biggest thing was, as someone who didn't think he would ever be in the industry, he just started a blog because he thought it would be fun. My thing is be persistent and stick with it, because if you keep chasing that dream, you can find a way in. And there are a lot of avenues into the outdoor industry these days. You don't need to be a media guy,
Yep.
Or work at a retail store or whatever. There's a lot of different ways. And we talked about it on that podcast. You could be a guide. You can go to it's your first responder course out of your way and start learning how to guide. There's so many different ways to get in and do things. So I would say, from the 30,000 foot view, identify what your passion is, go after it, and don't give up. For me, I spent a lot of nights coming home from my day job and writing on the couch instead of going out and doing other things, in order to build a little bit of a reputation and a resume that people would want to pay me to write for. And I kept going at it, and I just stuck to it until eventually I could start doing it full time.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's good advice. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, much the same as Kraig, is just do stuff. I mean, you're going to have a plan, but as Tudor Bompa said, no plan will stand up to the effects of bloody-minded adherence. And so, you start and you say, okay, I have a goal, I want to do this, but then you've got to be flexible enough to change. Like, how many people, Kraig, have we talked to at the industry that came into the industry thinking they were going to do this, and now here they are being a PR person for this, or they went and got a degree in this thinking that was going to be the way, and now they've completely changed around, and now they're in marketing. Or the girl who worked for Downtech, who was an intern that revolutionized. I mean, there's so many people that have a plan, but then you've got to, something comes up and you change. And the main thing is, as Kraig was saying, you just don't give up. You just keep going. And one other very helpful thing, if you want to become if you want to make a lot of money in the outdoor industry, start with more money. So it's at first you may end up having to still have a real job and do all that kind of stuff, because you're not going to walk in for the most part and have somebody pay you, 6 figures or 4 figures initially. But if you stick with it, and if you're passionate about it, they'll see the passion, they'll feel it. And as long as you keep moving forward, you'll find your niche.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Yeah, that's very well said.
Dave's real advice is start a 10-day long adventure race.
Well, that's worked for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. I stumbled into outdoor recreation early in my life and got 2 degrees in it, so it's paid off very well. I can tell you that.
You're the one.
Yes. I'm probably one of the
few.
You're
that guy.
Exactly.
We heard about you.
I think there's like 10 of us. Do you guys have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity? Obviously, there's a lot of exercise. Do you meditate, walk the dog, kick the dog?
I don't kick him. He's too big. I do take the dog to the dog park every morning, which is, for me, working from home now as a freelance writer. That's my sanity break. I take him out and I actually see people and talk to folks. So that's a good one. And then at the end of the day, I go for a run pretty much every day. And as I mentioned, that's kind of my exercise, but it's also is my form of staying sane. I put the earbuds in, listen to a podcast, go for a run for an hour or so, and works great for me.
A little meditation action there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and my only consistent thing is the podcast on Monday morning. Nothing else about my schedule is really consistent, just because we've got a 10-year-old, and so some of the days, and we live a fair ways out of town, and so I drive her into town 2 days a week. My wife does 3. We just opened the restaurant, and so sometimes there's shopping, there's this and that, and trying to get a mountain biker. So my days are not as consistent. I wish that I kind of I appreciate my flexibility in being able to do stuff, but on the other hand, I'm slightly jelly of Kraig having this is okay. Well, I'm going to go walk the dog, and now this is my run time, because I would love to be able to say every day, this is Dave's mountain bike time. Don't bother me. Yeah. And it's just right now I don't have that either the curse or the opportunity.
Well, and sometimes no routine is a routine, right? That can, it just kind of, life happens. So we all get
it does, but it does get a little. It does get I don't sleep much, which is good, but it does get a bit wearing from time to time.
It gets frantic and overwhelming at some point. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How about some favorite books? What are your guys' favorite books or books you've given as gifts?
Oh, well, how much time have you got?
Let's go with no more than 3. How about that?
Is there a genre? Because we've actually did a podcast interview on our favorite outdoor and adventure books, but are you talking any genre or just in the outdoor world?
Your top 3 favorite all time.
Oh my God.
Putting you on the spot.
Oh, wow.
I can go first, because I can say, first of all, my all-time favorite book is The Lord of the Rings, but everybody's read that at this point. But what else I'm reading kind of shuffles around depending on the mood. I'm a big history buff, so one of the books that I read somewhat recently that I really loved was Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, which is a fantastic book about how the Mongol Empire has had its lasting impact on the rest of the world. And that came after I went to Mongolia. an amazing place, by the way, and I just fell in love with it there. So
Yeah, I turned down a trip there a couple years ago. I need to go.
yeah, you do. It's beautiful. And then my other pick would be Reaching Beyond Boundaries by Don Mann. That's my book.
By who?
Don Mann and Kraig Becker. That's
okay, gotcha. Who?
And it was an outstanding read that has got atop my list as well.
It stays that way until October 15th when Overcoming Obstacles by Don Mann and Kraig Becker comes out.
Gotcha. Well, we'll make sure and link to those in the show notes. All right.
I've got a library full of books, and I love to read, and there's
Same.
always something that I'm working on. So.
Yeah, same. So many great books. Dave, did you figure it out? Top 3?
Oh, gosh. Well, no, I don't know top 3, but I'll throw out 3 that certainly would be on the list. Shantaram or Shantaram. It is an incredibly beautiful, painful, deep, challenging book to read with an amazing story.
Just finished
being made
it's
into a movie.
Is it being made into a movie? Oh, great. I was thinking about that as I was reading it.
And I'm not sure. So originally, Johnny Depp bought the rights to it and was willing to make the movie for free. He was so touched by
the book's amazing.
Book.
Yeah, one of the best books I read. Yep, I agree with you.
And that was huge. Of course, I was a huge Lord of the Rings fan as well. Another book that I love that comes to mind often is a book called Shibumi by Trevanian. Just a action adventure, very remarkable protagonist. I wouldn't say he's a hero. He's in some ways an anti-hero, but then the one that I'm reading that I just finished reading recently is the Time Frame Split Second books. I don't know if they would make my all-time list, but they're ones that I've just finished reading, and they've stuck with me enough that I've shared them and shared them with friends who have also loved them. And it's about basically somebody invents, a very young sort of Einstein of this age, invents time travel for reals, but you can only go back 15 millionths of a second. And people will say, okay, well, what? So what can you do with that? Well, that's what I thought. And then where they go with this book was brilliant. And so I love that. And of course, another one, Old Man's War, which is very profound, set in the future. Everybody's happy, everybody's healthy, and they're living a long time. But nobody wants to join the armed forces anymore because they don't, they're happy living their life. And so what they do is start recruiting these older guys, and they give them their choices. They can, not do it and die, or they can get this fountain of youth treatment and go back if they decide to fight. And, and being old, it was kind of it was a fun read.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds interesting too. I'll link to that in the show notes. Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Kristen Hostetter. She recommended Shantaram to me. That's a fabulous book. Yeah. This might be a tougher question for you guys. What is your favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100?
Oh boy.
That is a tough one. For me, I would probably say maybe my BioLite headlamp. I love that thing. It's super lightweight. Costs like $60, I think, and it's bright. It's comfortable to wear, which is not common on a headlamp.
Yeah.
They put a lot of thought into it, and I can wear it when I'm running at night,
Oh.
and it works great. It feels comfortable, and the band is actually kind of like a sweatband, so it doesn't absorb it. It actually dries quickly. They put a lot of thought into it. It's got a nice rechargeable battery pack that lasts pretty long time, and
Cool.
that's probably my favorite, at least currently. As a gear tester, new stuff's coming and going.
I'm with you. Yeah, it changes all the time for me. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. Dave, you got one?
Yeah. A couple, I would say my Black Diamond Z poles, my trekking poles, because I use those a lot. Again, when I trail run with bad ankles, I tend to like running with poles, and they're just such a great pole. I think they're 6 ounces or something.
Oh wow!
So they're not the most burly, but they're quick, easy. They fold up. They're light. So I use those a lot. I mean, one of them's got the tip broken off, and I still use it. Or else I would say right now my favorite, and I would throw this out for my wife because she has adopted it, is our Matador free rein 24-liter backpack. It's like the 4-ounce ultimate backpack. And what did we end up taking down to Jackson to do our day hikes? Yep, the Matador backpack. So my wife absolutely loves it. Therefore, I do as well.
All right, good. I'll link to those in the show notes too. That's awesome.
I'd throw in a good old reliable Buff as well.
That was I was going to mention that one too.
That's come up a lot.
I actually did that as a gear review on our podcast most recently because I got back from Africa and we had used them there to keep the dust out of our faces, and they've been around forever. Everybody probably has a dozen Buffs somewhere in their house, and I wear one every day when I go for a run in the heat and such. And it's just one of those things that's just so handy and useful. And for $20, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's come up a lot. That and headlamps, I think, are the top two on my show. They keep coming up.
Well, the $100 price limit makes it hard.
Exactly. That's why I threw that in there. Can't let you get away easy with one of these, big money stoves or some of the cool gear out there. As we wrap up here, is there anything you'd like? Let me do that again. As we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to say or ask of our listeners?
Come check out the Adventure Podcast. You can find us on Apple and Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play Store. I think we have an interesting format, I think, that a lot of people seem to like. It's a longer podcast than most people are used to because episodes tend to stretch to about an hour and a half. And that can mix in with, we start the show with adventure news where we talk about things that are going on in Everest climbing scene or sailing around the world or skiing to the North or South Pole or whatever. And then we usually have an interview or a main topic of some sort. And then we wrap things up with a little gear reviews on things we've been using. And the format seems to strike a nice chord. So
you guys cover a lot of good info. It's good. Yeah. We'll link to that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. And then my only thing would be just telling your listeners the same as we do ours is to make sure you do something every day. Just get out and do, no matter how small, even if it's just do a few push-ups or walk the dog or chase your kids around the yard or get out on your bike. This truly is just live your adventure, patent pending.
That's good. That's great. And if people want to follow up directly, how can they find you guys? On LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? What's the best way?
Yep, all of those.
Okay.
Yeah, you can find us. You can find me on Twitter at Kung Fu Jedi. Yes, I do have that as my Twitter account.
Cool.
You can find me. You can email.
It's a good story too.
And you can email me directly at kungfujedi@gmail.com if you have questions or you're looking for stuff. You can also find us the Adventure Podcast on Facebook if you're looking to find that. We're all over the socials.
We'll link to all that stuff, social stuff too. Yeah, we'll put links to all that. Yeah, cool. Well, great guys. It's been great catching up. Thanks for having me on your show. Good to have you on my show. It's kind of fun to do this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. That was great.
We'll have to
That was our pleasure. Thank you.
We'll have to do something jointly at OR somehow. Figure out something.
That would be really fun, actually.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, we'll figure something out. Cool. All right, have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Cheers.
Thanks.
All right, see you.
Rick.
Yep, bye-bye. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to go to the OutdoorBizPodcast.com where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.